very good evening to everyone present here today. On behalf of IIM Bangalore and Team Vista, I take great pleasure in introducing to you Mr. Rajdeep Sardesai, one of India's favorite and most successful political journalists. Mr. Sardesai is the consulting editor of the India Today Group. Until recently, he was the editor-in-chief of the IBN 18 network. He has also worked with the Times of India for 6 years and was a city editor of its Mumbai edition at the young age of 26. Mr. Sardesai was awarded the prestigious Padma Shri Award for Journalism in 2008, the International Broadcasting Award for coverage of the 2002 Gujarat riots, and the Ramnath Goenka Excellence in Journalism Award in 2007. Mr. Sardesai also won the Asian Television Award for talk show presentation and was the News Anchor of the Year at the Indian Television Academy for 8 consecutive years. I'm sure a lot of us remember being glued to our television sets every Saturday night, hoping to make it into the school debate team, and hoping that someday we would become debaters like Mr. Sardesai was in the big fight. Sir, a good lot of us definitely owe a portion of our debating skills to you. Without further ado, I would like to request Pallavi to welcome Mr. Sardesai.
Thank you very much for having me here first. I must confess that I get intimidated when I go to a IIM or an IIT. Not having been to either or having had a hope in hell to get into either. In fact, there was an interview which was done by one of the students just now and asked me, what advice would you give IIM students? And I said, look, I would be far too intimidated to give IIM students advice. They need to give me advice. Then I was asked, what is going to be the subject that you want to speak about? And I've been thinking about this, and I thought I would speak about media and the idea of India. Sounds very grand, and I might ramble a bit about that. I also thought about it because we live in an age where I'm sure most of you, while you've had me, you've been very gracious enough to invite me here, simply dislike the media. You guys hate all of us. You still watch some of us. But you think that we do nautanki, we do tamasha. It's actually, and most journalists, that's true. Most of us become journalists because we failed at everything else. I was a lawyer. I was trained to be a lawyer. 6 months into doing law at Bombay High Court, I realized that I couldn't work those long hours, and I looked for something which was far more comfortable. I also wanted to be a cricketer and then realized cricket needs merit. And so I kept looking for a profession where merit didn't matter, hard work didn't matter, and I found journalism. Or journalism found me, whichever way you want to look at it. There was no television in 1988 when I joined this profession. And it was only in 94 that really private television came to this country. I thought about talking about the media and the idea of India because just a couple of weeks ago, I was at IIT Guwahati delivering a similar lecture. And it was the week when the Sheena Bora case was making the headlines. The murder of a woman was primetime news. Every night, it was almost as if that's all you saw. And I was in Guwahati, where in Assam there were floods across the state in that week. And every channel or so-called national channel had sent its reporters to Assam, not to cover the floods, but to cover the Sheena Bora case. Everyone wanted to talk to her brother, someone wanted to talk to her aunt, any relative of Sheena would do. Nobody bothered to go into either lower Assam or upper Assam to cover the floods. 2 weeks before that, I was in Manipur. And honestly, out of all the states that I've traveled over the years, the one that has left me sort of shell-shocked is Manipur. I don't know if there's anyone from Manipur here, but to my mind, there is no state where the Indian state has simply disappeared as much or disintegrated as it has in Manipur. While I was there, for 40 days, there had been curfew. There has been this entire battle between tribals and non-tribals, and whether there should be a inner line permit system. And Manipur comes to a halt at 6 p.m. The city is blacked out virtually. If you read the national media, you will absolutely have no idea of anything happening in Manipur. The only day we covered Manipur in these last 40 days was when an MLA's house was burnt. And suddenly the images of a burnt MLA's house seemed attractive enough to at least register it for 30 seconds. So the other day when someone from Manipur rang me up and said, "Sir, you're still not covering our story," I said, "The sad truth is you might have to burn the house of another MLA. And it was only half in jest. Because the fact is that Manipur doesn't register on the national map. As one of them told me, "Sir, 18 Indian army men are killed on the border in Manipur in some kind of a operation, and you make it headlines. But when Manipuris die, it doesn't make a difference to you. Aren't we Indian citizens?" And he was right. Somewhere down the line, Manipur has fallen off the map. Somewhere down the line, the fact is that Sheena Bora's case, attractive though it is, sexy though it is, sensational though it is, completely obscured the fact that Assam had seen floods. And there are large parts of this country increasingly which simply don't register on the map of the so-called national media. A little bit of waterlogging in Noida, a little bit of waterlogging in Mumbai, and it's breaking news. What will it take to register a Manipur on the, or an Assam on the national map? Jharkhand. I have a stringer in Jharkhand who I met a few months ago. And when I went to his house, he invited me to his house, and he had various gods placed at various places in his puja room, and there was a picture of Mahendra Singh Dhoni there also. So I said, "What is Mahendra Singh Dhoni doing among Krishna and Shiva and all your other gods and Ganpati?" He said, "Sir, if there was no Mahendra Singh Dhoni, there would be no work for me. Because the only time that national media rings him up to ask him to cover Jharkhand is when Dhoni is returning from some foreign tour or the other. And his big worry is, what happens, sir, when Dhoni retires? Mera kya hoga?" And then you ask yourself, Jharkhand is one of India's largest states. It's one of the states where there is much to report on, but it doesn't register on the national map. Chhattisgarh, large part of this country. The only time that Chhattisgarh seems to register on the national map is when Naxals kill 50 cops. And I use the word 50 advisedly almost because it almost seems as if 10, 20, 30, 40, don't, it's got to be 50. And then it becomes big breaking news. That's the heart of the country. Within states, there is a wide disparity. Mumbai and the bright lights of Mumbai will be covered. But a Marathwada, where 729 farmers as of yesterday have committed suicide since the start of the year, just doesn't register on the map of, just doesn't register on our collective conscience anymore. And you ask yourself that what kind of a media are we now promoting, creating, and what kind of an idea of India are we now trying to project? Is it an idea of India that is reflected simply through the mirror of a Delhi, Mumbai? Even within cities there's a grade. Next comes Bangalore. Calcutta is, like the eastern part of this country, slowly slipping off the map. And you start asking yourself, what kind of an idea of India do we want? The television revolution in this country took place about 21 years ago in 1994. We first started with a private sort of half-an-hour bulletin on Doordarshan. And the idea of that was to break the monopoly of Doordarshan. Because in the era of Doordarshan, if you were in government, then every minister who was cutting a ribbon got prime time news. If you were in the opposition, you were not looked at. Doordarshan was a state-controlled medium which ran news as the government of India decided. And I think what 21 years ago happened was the monopoly of Doordarshan over news was broken. Broken perhaps forever and hopefully will never return. And there was the idea that private news television will take this country into a new independent world, as it were. 21 years later, I have to ask myself, is this the world that we really wanted? We have a world where at 11 o'clock in the night, let's say on a private news channel today, you'll have a crime program where the anchor looks like a criminal because he's supposed to do that. And he will in a sense tell you, आपने देखा आज हम आपको बताएंगे कि देश में कितने बलात्कार हुए. आज हम आपको बताएंगे कि किस जगह में किसने किसका खून किया है. Now, you know, this might be a thing which will get claps and titters and all that. It's a more banal aspect of what is happening within news hierarchies. There is also the other big danger of just what kind of content do we project. The fact is that increasingly news is based on what I call an outrage industry. I'm sure many of you here are part of Twitter, anonymous trolls. Some of you, maybe you troll me. And it's a world which is driven by anonymity and also driven by outrage. You're increasingly in the media looking for aaj ka mujrim kaun, aaj ka bakra kaun. Who's that one person that I'm going to hang from morning to night? Because in a country of 1.2 billion people, there's always some idiot, some pumpkin making some stupid statement in some corner of the country. But he takes over the space to the exclusion of almost all else. So it's almost as if that's all that's happening in the country at that moment. And nothing else matters. And the fact is, this is not any other country. This is the most diverse subcontinental size of a country. This is not, England, where you can sort of maybe go from one corner of England to the other inside a day. This is a country which therefore needs its plurality, its diversity to be reflected, to be showcased, to be highlighted. That's one part of it. The other challenge of it is, how are we going to represent each other in terms of our identities? How do we relate to each other? And I'll give you an example. And this is in the context of this growing Hindu-Muslim question. The other day on one of the programs that was there on Aaj Tak, where I am a consultant, so I only do my program, so you can't hold me responsible for everything that comes on air. But there was a program which was going on, which had one Hindu Mahasabha guy with a tika, and it had one Muslim Maulvi with a dadi and a topi. 3 days later, I saw the same two guys again. So I asked the news editor, yaar, 2 दिन पहले ये लोग आए थे, why are you getting them again? He said, sir, देखिए, वो जब तक आप टीवी को म्यूट में जब देखते हैं ना, तो आपको एक बंदे को दाढ़ी में दिखाना चाहिए, एक टीका में दिखाना चाहिए. फिर लोगों को लगेगा कि हिंदू मुस्लिम हो रहा है. So he wanted to create the idea that there was a Hindu-Muslim conflict. Now the fact is that the Hindu leader who was on the program has never won an election, will probably never win one. And the Muslim leader had also never won an election, will probably never win one. But the fact was, they were representing two extreme sides of the story, and they represented a stereotype. Because the stereotypical image which had been created was the Maulvi or the Muslim leader will be with his dadi and topi, the Hindu leader will be in a tika, and they're going to have a fight. So therefore, in the process, there was no space for any moderate opinion. These were two sharp-edged opinions who were expected to fulfill a particular role. So television or media, instead of trying to find space for sane, I won't use the word moderate, but sane opinion, was actually looking for two loud extreme opinions. Because unless you have two loud extreme opinions, how are you going to create television drama? Similarly, when we take a Pakistani guest today, in most channels, on most programs, you will usually have a retired general from Pakistan. And generals in Pakistan and generals in India discover the virtues of war only after they've left the army. While they're in the army, you'll never hear them say it. The moment it's like bureaucrats. Bureaucrats discover the virtue of corruption after they've retired from the bureaucracy. And there you have a situation where an Indian general and a Pakistani general are going to go at each other. And you're going to ask yourselves, and my Pakistani friends, many of whom journalists are far braver today than Indian journalists are, say, sir, aapko yahi idiots milte hain roz to represent the Pakistani viewpoint. Some of these generals now have been clever enough to even ask for, when they appear on air, $300 to be deposited in their account in Dubai. They've even opened an account in Dubai because you can't transfer money from India to Pakistan, so you open it in Dubai. So we are actually paying Pakistani generals to come on TV to abuse India, and paying Indian generals to come on TV to abuse Pakistan. And that is the level of discourse that we want to reduce what is an extremely complex issue, frankly. I'll give you another concrete example of this, the dangers of this. Sometime in, I think, end of 2013, early 2014, 2 Indian soldiers were beheaded on the border. It's a terrible place, the LOC. It's not a nice, pretty place, but please understand, ताली 2 हाथ से बजती है. if Indian soldiers are beheaded, Pakistani soldiers also get shot. If you see Indian channels, you'll only believe Indian soldiers are shot. If you see Pakistani channels, you believe only Pakistanis are shot. The fact is, though, 2 Indian soldiers were beheaded. Next thing you knew, we were outraging about the fact is, when will India now act? How long are we going to keep quiet? To the point where, as a former external affairs minister told me, Rajdeep, you're pushing us to war. I told him, no sir, don't worry, war will take place in the studio, not on the border. But the fact is, you were pushing the government of India to take decisions based on the fact that you were creating outrage. Now, the real story is that 2013 was the most peaceful year between India and Pakistan on the border. But peace doesn't sell. It's like secularism doesn't sell anymore. It's so much easier to sell communalism than it is to sell secularism in India. It's so much easier to sell peace. So much easier to sell war in this country than it is to sell peace. And as a result, we are becoming a society, and the idea of India, which was based on people working together in a plural, diverse society, is becoming increasingly an idea of them versus us. And there are dangerous consequences of this, of the stereotyping of communities, of the stereotyping of social groups. We've seen the dangerous consequences of it even through social media, where here in Bengaluru a few years ago, students from the northeast were rushing back to their homes because there were messages coming on their social media in a sense to suggest that they would be targeted next. And we have a situation, therefore, in a country where if a Kashmiri wants to get rented accommodation in a Delhi or Mumbai, he or she may find it extremely difficult. Because you have created a stereotype through television or through mass media today that most Kashmiris है ना, वो तो सब militant होते हैं, वो सब कहीं ना कहीं terrorists से जुड़े हुए हैं. And the sad truth of the fact is that the Kashmiri today finds himself trapped. I mean, one of them told me something very interesting the other day. He said, "Sir, आप कब तक ये Sayyid Ali Shah Gilani को दिखाओगे? The man is 85, doddering, barely able to stand, but every time you show him, he gets more muscle. And he gets revived." And that is the truth of this, of the nature of the media. We are looking for the likes. Now, if there is a good example, it is Asauddin Owaisi. Asauddin Owaisi, one MP of one party, single MP from Hyderabad, has suddenly become the spokesperson for the entire Muslim community. And I asked Asauddin, who's a very intelligent man, he's a bar at law from Lincoln's Inn. I said, "Yaar, tum ye hamesha dadi topi leke." He says, "Boss, that's what my voter wants also. That's how they see me." So he's playing up to a stereotype. The media is pushing him into the corner where he has to answer questions. He gave a wonderful speech on land acquisition. Nobody heard it. Every speech that he will give on Hindu-Muslim relations will be shown. So you pigeonholed Asauddin Owaisi as the voice or the spokesperson of the Indian Muslim. Tomorrow we will pigeonhole probably on the other side some Praveen Togadia kind of figure to represent the so-called extremist fringe, but extremism, as I said, sells. And therefore he also gets his space. And you ask yourself, where is the space then for sane, moderate voices? And are we creating increasingly a society that is so angry and so negative and so outraged all the time that where is the positive energy of this great country being showcased by the media? This country runs because 99% of Indians, I still believe, are extremely honest. This country needs those 1% to be exposed. But this country cannot run on the basis of sab neta chor hai. This country cannot run on the basis that har jo Kashmiri hai wo terrorist se juda hua hai. Then you are creating the platform for a very dangerous idea of India. And to my mind, you're creating a generation of young Indians who are increasingly cynical about India or are disconnected from what they see on TV. That the real India is moving far ahead of Indian civil society, is moving far ahead of us. We in television are actually, or we in media are actually stuck in the past. Most news channels in this country don't have a full-time science and technology correspondent. Most news channels in this country don't have a full-time education correspondent, don't have a full-time environment correspondent, don't have a full-time agriculture correspondent. So therefore, when we want to discuss an issue like minimum support price, there will be very few people in the media who have an understanding of minimum support price. And you start asking yourself that are we eliminating large sections of the population of this country from the mass media? Now you're going to all ask me, Rajdeep is standing here as self-righteous as ever. You're very much part of this syndrome. How different are you to the rest? You're absolutely right. Mea culpa. I claim that I'm guilty. I'm as guilty as any. In different degrees, we are all responsible for where we've reached. Perhaps we've reached here because the business model of mass media today is such that it doesn't allow me the luxury of sending, let's say, a correspondent to spend 20 days in Chhattisgarh to actually try and find out what's happening on the ground, or 10 days in Manipur to actually find what's happening in the ground. The easiest formula in the business model that we have, the cheapest formula, is to get 6 morons to fight with each other in the studio. Each one louder than the other. Each one, in fact, there are guys who will ring me up at 8:15, aap mujhe batao topic kya hai? So there are guys who will come into your studio not knowing what the topic is, say, what should I say? Ek do cheeze mujhe batao. I mean, I admire today to be a party spokesperson, you are a better all-rounder than Kapil Dev ever was. Because you have to know a little bit about everything. Now, are these the kind of people? That guy who comes as a spokesperson has no clue about minimum support price either. So how is he going to actually have a reasoned debate on agriculture in this country? He's not. He's come there because, he feels this is his 15 minutes on fame. And literally 15 minutes, because 15 minutes later you'll find him on another channel. And then he'll move to a third channel. So you've created a business model which is driven by talk TV. You've created increasingly a business model for newspapers which is not driven by investment in deep investigations anymore. Because the sad truth of it is that in India, actually, we end up paying about 40 to 50 crores to a cable operator every year through carriage fees just to show the channel. And then if you add salaries of employees, you've reached an 80-90 crore per year just on that. You have no money left for news gathering. Forget about the idea of India. We are just happy with the idea ki kuch to dikha do. And it takes me back to where we started 21 years ago. I remember when I was with Dr. Roy, I remember asking him once, sir, you're going to start a 24-hour channel, dikhayenge kya? What will we show? And now 21 years later, I realize that this is what we are going to show. Because this is the easiest thing to show in the world. And it is extremely worrying because we are a country, I believe, which needs to reflect social change. We are a country in transition. This is a critical period in this country's history. And we need to show the change. Now, change cannot only be represented by showing endless speeches of the Prime Minister. Change cannot be reflected simply by having 5 people coming in and doing a cockfight. I actually call it the Ravan school of journalism because a day will come when you'll have 100 airheads on your TV screen. And you won't know what's happening. Now the question is, can we find, therefore, a better quality media in this country? How are we going to discover? The real challenge for professionals like me at the end of the day is going to be, are we going to be able to find better quality stuff? Can we actually stretch the boundaries of what we do to actually say, look, everyone will do this. We are going to do something different. Or are we going to say there are television rating points in this country, or TRPs? 8,000 boxes will decide a fate of a country of 1.2 billion where there are already 160,000 cable and satellite homes. Sorry, 160 million cable and satellite homes. In a country of 160 million cable and satellite homes, will 8,000 TRP boxes decide what we will show in news? And we decide you're going to break away from it all. Is that possible? Is someone willing to have the courage? People say, why can't you do a BBC in India? The fact is, BBC is run on a trust model, where the taxpayer is actually paying for the financing of BBC. CNN is run on a model where CNN lives on subscription. And therefore, 70% of the revenues of CNN come through subscription. In India, you have a strange situation where 90% of my revenues come through advertising and only 10% come from subscription. So I'm entirely dependent almost on an advertising-driven model. This is a country where you will pay 500 rupees to get 400 channels. And if your cable operator increases your price by 10 bucks, you'll get upset. So if you pay peanuts, you're going to get monkeys like us. You know, if you don't invest. So one way out is to have a system where people are willing to subscribe and pay for better quality TV. The other way out is to have a trust model of a kind that the BBC has, but if the Indian government, which should have done that ideally with Doordarshan, has singularly failed to do that, then can 10 industrialists, can a Nandan Nilekani, Azim Premji, 10 guys in Bangalore come together and say, we are putting together a corpus of 2,000 crores. Some of them have actually now come together and put together a corpus of 100 crores. Now, to my mind, and I told this to Mr. A, 100 crores is not going to resolve the problem. You need to think big. Put 2,000 crores and tell yourself that this 2,000 crores is being put in a trust to ensure that India gets the best quality media. Set up a house where quality professionals are encouraged to look at areas like science and technology, environment, build it, forget no profit, no loss syndrome, build a trust model. How many of our industrialists are willing to do that? They will spend 12 crores on buying a Chris Gale in an IPL auction, or spend hundreds of crores in buying an IPL team, but nobody wants to pay and invest in good media. Instead, what do they want to do? Most corporates want to take over television channels to promote their own private interests. And that's happening all across the country. In the same Northeast that I was there a few days ago, there are about half a dozen channels today, all of which are owned by politicians of the Northeast. And now that elections are coming up there, a few more people also want to buy news channels. Everyone has money, because in this industry now, if your color of your money is black, you have a better chance to survive. There is a guy who runs some kind of a chicken poultry farm in Uttar Pradesh, who has now set up a news channel. Earlier he was in real estate. So I asked him, why are you setting up a channel? Sir, kya milega? He said, no, 2 years ago, एक channel ने मेरे खिलाफ story की थी. I decided मैं तो revenge लूंगा, channel ही खरीदूंगा. So these are the kind of people who are entering. In Punjab, for example, the Akalis have mastered this art. The Akalis now today decided, forget about owning a channel. We will own cable. So therefore, in Punjab, if anyone does a story against the Akalis, your channel is yanked off. Immediately. Jayalalitha does it, but Jayalalitha also hasn't monopolized it as much as the Akalis have. She's got her Arasu channel group, and you've got the Sun TV network, because it's so powerful, has been able to somewhat resist it. But please ask yourself, what kind of a country are we where cable, where television channels are increasingly only going to be controlled by those who have their own private agendas? I'm in Bangalore, and I'll give you a lovely story to tell you just how deep this rot is in a way. A few years ago, there were the Reddy brothers ran this state in a way, from Bellary. Interesting, I think the father was a police inspector. But that, as many films will show, doesn't stop the children from turning to criminality. Dawood Ibrahim is another good example of that. Anyway, the Reddy brothers ran what we thought was a completely corrupt sort of parallel regime in Bellary. So we did a story called the Reddy Republic. So we started running promos of it. So my distribution person from here rings up, sir, you are doing a big mistake. Mr. Reddy has threatened to remove the channel. So I said, why is he removing it? No, he wants to speak to you. So I speak to Mr. Reddy. And the good thing is criminals usually speak in extremely soft voices. So he rings up, Mr. Sardesai, what is this? You are doing story on us. I said, yes, sir, they've done a long investigation. No, this is very wrong. So at the end of 5 minutes, the conversation ended with us agreeing to some kind of a compromise. I said, sir, we won't call it the Reddy Republic, we'll call it the Mining Republic. He seemed reasonably happy with it. The story ran, and the story had about how they had corrupted the entire mining industry of that part of Karnataka. The moment the story ran, from the next moment, the channels were yanked off all across Karnataka. So my distribution guy rang me up in panic, sir, what to do now? Mr. Reddy is very upset. So for 4 days, Mr. Reddy was upset. The channels were yanked off all over Bangalore. Finally, our distribution guy said, sir, we'll start losing revenue. Then you are under pressure as an editor. So I had to ring up Mr. Reddy again. I said, sir, I'm very sorry. It should, we did this story about you, but, we didn't realize that you would be so angry. He said, no, I'm not that way. Otherwise I'm a good man. But you must stay away from this Bellary thing. You can report other things, you stay away from Bellary. So out of frustration, I said, okay, sir, don't worry. We won't run another story immediately or whatever. We won't run any more stories. The channel was put on mysteriously again half an hour later. So the channels were back. Then you start asking yourself, there are Reddy-like characters all across this country. Chhagan Bhujbal controls Nashik. So if you do a story against Chhagan Bhujbal, entire Nashik will be switched off. There are all kinds of characters in this large country of ours, each one of whom runs their private agendas. And then you ask yourself, yes, there's a question of a free media. But importantly, there's a question of an idea of India. Because the idea of India was based on the idea of a free media. The idea of India was based on the idea that this would be a media that would be out there exposing, that would be out there being able to reveal India in its various shades. But if we are in India which cannot reveal the Manipurs, which will stereotype the Kashmiris, which will stand back before you expose the Reddys, then I think we are in troubled times. The glass is half full as much as it is half empty. We are the ultimate 50-50 country. So while I can stand here and say a lot of our journalism is terrible and we've made mistakes and we've failed in various ways, the glass is also half full to the extent that we are to a large extent also able to expose a corruption. A lot of the corruption that was exposed during the Manmohan Singh years was exposed on television or through television or really through the media. The fact I've always believed is it will be much more difficult today to demolish the Babri Masjid as it was in 1992 when there was no television. Because now before the car sevaks would reach the top of the dome, there would be 10 television cameras saying, "Aap kyo chad rahe hain?" And I still remember in 1992, that was not the case. We had no clue of what was happening. I was sitting in Mumbai and only images, grainy images coming through the BBC. And that actually encouraged a lot of rumor, encouraged a lot of speculation. I know I've been among those who's been criticized for our coverage of the Gujarat 2002 riots, but I believe it was necessary. And I will bring you the army vice chief, who's now retired, and he will tell you that it was because there were television pictures being shown that he rang up his boss and said, "Sir, we have to be on the streets of Gujarat." Because if you believe that the political class of this country wanted for 48 hours those riots to stop, I'm sorry, you are mistaken. And I know that some of those people now have gone on to higher things in life. Hum to wahi ke wahi reh gaye. And some of them have become bigger people. But the fact was they have a lot to answer for. And therefore it is important to have television to be accountable. It is important to show that mirror. People can attack us for various ways. It is important to show the mirror, good, bad, ugly. I remember when I refer every time to 2002, people ask me, but what about 1984? And I turned around, I was in college in 1984. What do I do? And frankly, I believe that riots like 1984 would have stayed in the public memory for much longer if there was a television camera. We covered the 92-93 riots in Mumbai with as much intensity as we covered Gujarat. The fact is there was no television camera to tell that story. And therefore you need the television camera. You need the power of social media. Today there is no place to hide. There are corporates today who will commit all kinds of sins. And television will not show them, or me as a journalist or the structure in which I live will not be able to expose it because we have various interests which will prevent. I mean, we can do sting operations and everyone else. The two people who always get away, or the one person, two people who get away. One are judges because they will throw contempt of court at you. And the other are corporates because corporates control the purse strings. But therefore you need social media to tell those stories about those corporates which maybe even so-called mainstream media cannot. So you need more media. You need more informed quality media. That's the key. If you can get more informed quality media today, then that person who's sitting in Manipur will not have to tell me again, "Sir, am I a citizen of this country or not?" To my mind, until I find an answer to that, I believe I will have failed the idea of India. Thank you very much.